Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar on small business, big impact, leveraging AI for competitive advantage. AI is a buzzword with more tools being available, and it's hard for entrepreneurs to decide which tools to use or which processes to automate. My name is Rayhan Aleem. I'm the managing partner and founder of AlphaPro Partners. We're an accounting firm based in Dubai and are zero platinum partners. We normally have our webinars in the morning, but today we had to make an exception and have it in the afternoon because we have a very special guest joining us all the way from Canada. So I'm pleased to be joined by TJ Walia, who's the founder and principal consultant at Zentek Solutions. TJ, thank you very much for joining us today. Do you want to tell us more about yourself and about your company and what your mission is?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, thank you for making the exception, Rayhan. I know it's a big difference. It's about 7 a.m. here where I am, so I think it was a good balance between getting the audiences on both sides of the world. So my name is TJ Walia. I spent, I would say, 20 years in the corporate world, out of which 15 were spent with organizations such as Microsoft. And within that realm, I had the privilege of holding a lot of interesting and various different roles that allowed me to span across various industries. I'd probably say even all industries, whether it's mining, whether it's healthcare, retail, policing, you name the industry, I've probably touched it. And that was a great opportunity for me to learn. And so currently, as of, I would say about 7 months ago, I actually left Microsoft to build my own company, which is Zentek. And I had found that there was a gap in the market where a lot of organizations were not seeing the value or understanding how to attain the value of work-life balance, mental health, productivity, including AI. So my focus has always been through my career of being efficient and effective and finding easier ways to do things that essentially take longer. And so my productivity has always been my main go-to. And primarily not because it's something I chose, it actually chose me. Back in 2014, I actually had burnout in the corporate world, and I was in a situation where I actually fainted at a customer meeting. And what that led me to do was change everything I do, and understanding, how efficient I have to be, how effective I have to be, was absolutely critical. And I had to be very selective of the time that I dedicated towards certain tasks. So that led me on a journey of building a new program that I did for myself, which I eventually started training my peers at Microsoft on. And when I started training them, started from 5 to 10, it started getting more and more traction. So I was doing sessions with a few hundred people every single time, to the point back in 2021, I did a session. We had over 5,000 people just join randomly on a session that wasn't promoted or anything. So that's when I realized this is my calling. There's something else there that I can provide. There's value I can provide to people outside of just the world of Microsoft, and hence why I decided to leave and start on my own journey.
No, thank you very much for sharing that. So yeah, in terms of housekeeping, obviously we'll be doing Q&A at the end. So please put them in the comment section below and we'll read them out. This webinar is also recorded and will be shared on YouTube and to the attendees who have registered as well. Just a quick question, TJ. So you obviously was at Microsoft 7 months ago. So you was around the time when Microsoft acquired an ownership of OpenAI, ChatGPT, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I remember it was around the December, January timeframe when all that started happening, and then AI just blew up. And for me, I had already planned my exit, and that's when I looked and said, okay, this is an area I was very close to. So one of the roles I was leading at Microsoft was the national IoT lead. And for those of you who are familiar with IoT, it's basically Internet of Things, all the little smart watches, sensors, smart switches, all of that. And in order for them to work effectively, yes, they can do a simple function, but the real fun of that technology comes when you actually leverage AI. And those devices have one key function, and that's sending out a lot of data. So they're always collecting data, whether their state is on, what the conditions are, why they're on, whether there's a state of off or other changes that would happen. So I had the opportunity to work with a lot of organizations in Canada where, especially in the startup space, because that was up and coming. And that really was where my passion was. And when I saw that happening with AI, and I've been using AI for a while. So when I started seeing all of that happening. I said maybe there's another avenue that we can look at, and that's what I've been using for my own business essentially as well. But to answer your question, Rehan, yes, I was definitely seeing all of that happening when I took my leave.
No, thanks for sharing that.
And so I'd love to get into what the potential benefits are from a small business perspective, Rehan, for our audience today, and leveraging the tools like AI. Some of them may have heard of it, some of them may have just been hesitant to use it. And in today's session, what I want to do is I want to touch on eliminating the fear of using such a tool. And I've been doing trainings like this. I was in Seattle a few weeks ago doing a session at the Microsoft offices, and it was a similar thing. So whether we're a small business or someone from a big corporate company, we're essentially people at the end. So the same things motivate and drive us. And one of the biggest things that's restricting a lot of us in the leverage and usage of AI is, one is the understanding, right? But two is the fear. And in today's session, what I want to do is hopefully eliminate the fear so you can start poking around and get a little bit more comfortable with a tool such as ChatGPT. And what that will do for you, the possibilities are endless. But I also want to touch on today what not to do when you're using the tool as well. So remember, we're talking about the fear. So what kind of information should we be putting through the system and what should we not? So we'll touch on all of that. But the tool in itself, and I'm only talking about ChatGPT today, like AI as an overall is a very large and fast growing ecosystem. And every day, I'm sure you guys are hearing about different apps that are coming to market, different solutions that are coming to market. And it's not about just jumping into every single or any one of those solutions. It's really understanding what you as an organization or a business need. And a lot of you might be wondering, how does that tie into the small business side? And my background, I grew up in a family that actually always had small businesses. And we had a chain of retail clothing stores in Canada for as long as I can remember. And my father actually, just during COVID, closed his last store down. And we had a chain of, I think, about 7 or 8 across the Toronto area and all the major malls. And I saw the struggles and the challenges growing up of a small business not having access to all the tools that some of the big players do. And when we looked at some of the big competitors, we would see that they would have computerized and digital systems. So it was always an aspiration of how do we now take our system and make it digital, or have inventory management in a digital way. And I remember I must have been 18 or 19 at the time, and I have a computer science background. So I actually built a POS system just for my father's business. Say, hey, you know what? Let's start leveraging this rather than going out and buying something and investing tens and tens of thousands of dollars at the time. Let me build something for you. And it was a good project for me as well. And we ended up building the system and leveraging a couple of our stores. But the point is, not everyone has access to that. But today, Rehan, that game has changed drastically, right? It's if I wanted to have a point of sale system, and some of these our listeners are going to be individuals who have business for a long time versus some that are just starting out, or some that have just recently started. You can get a lot of online solutions that will give you a point of sale and an inventory management system that you start right from the cloud. That's the transition we're looking at with AI. And AI today takes all of the power it has and it brings it down to every single individual. So you don't have to be a large corporation with large funding and large budgets to be able to have access to these tools. You're now in a spot where you can have the same access that anyone in a Microsoft, Google, Apple, or any other organization has access to. And that's what we want to touch on and what the advantages are. And I've tailored our conversation more towards the advantages of a small business, so it's relevant for what we're looking to achieve. So things such as generating content. A lot of small businesses struggle to run their day to day and then build a social media presence. It's not feasible unless you hire someone who's dedicated. Today, that's changed. It takes a matter of seconds to generate content that you can put out there. And I'm not talking about just throwing any content out there, right? We don't want to do that either, because that can tarnish your brand. It can have an impact of, is the content relevant, etc. So what I'm talking about is really catering and to your specific business niche in terms of creating that content. And the way ChatGPT allows you to do that is basically giving it the instructions. And the concept is called prompt engineering. And if you guys want to do a little bit of research on that, but prompt engineering allows you to learn how to talk to the AI. And that's what becomes essential in terms of what we get back from it. And
Yeah.
I will say a lot of the times, if you're not talking to the tool properly, you're going to get garbage coming back to you. And you're going to be like, this is not relevant. And that was one of my struggles in the early days. And I'm like, this tool isn't working for me. It's not giving me what I want. And I would fight with it. And even to this day, I still fight with the tool in terms of, this is not the information I'm looking for. This is what I'm looking for. Let's tweak it. But it becomes a conversation. And so the tool is really what you put into it. And if you learn how to put the right messaging into the tool and how to talk to it, which is again prompt engineering, it will give you a lot more back. So investing some time in that for yourselves, I think, would be absolutely essential. But you can take it from building contracts for your employees or NDAs. So you're now not having to go through a lawyer to generate a lot of that stuff that you would typically have to go through. I would still say advise a lawyer once it's done, but the overall structure of it can easily be created and used as a template. For those starting out or looking for a business loan and things like that, the banks usually ask for a business plan. So you can feed it enough information about your business and what your goals are that it can actually spit out a well drafted and well crafted business plan that you can just print out and go take to the bank and say, hey, this is what I'm planning on doing. A lot of us don't have that skill, right? A lot of us don't have the ability to go into Excel and pull out, create these tables of projections and information about our business or write it up in a certain way. ChatGPT today can do that for us. And even the one I love is training plans. When I do training, and that's one of the things I do in business, I look at my audience and understand what they're going to be looking to get out of the session. And from there, I go back and say, okay, let's design a training plan that is going to be, let's say, 2 days long for a training on topic X. And that topic, I can provide it more insights of, this is how I see this topic. This is how my perspective or what my perspective is, and get it to generate all of that for me rather than just sitting there doing it myself. And there's been questions about this from a lot of the customers I talk to and an organization that I work with. Is it ethical in the same way? Is it the right thing to do? It's AI now generating it. How can I take accountability for something that AI is building? And I asked there was a CEO that I was working with for a firm, and I said, if you hired an intern and said, build this out for me and then give it to me as a presentation, and then you went and delivered that presentation, are you asking the same question at that point as saying, whose ownership is it, or does it belong to your company? So that's how I'm looking at the content that we're creating, because it's not just content that ChatGPT is spitting out. It's actually a combination of your inputs with the content it's putting out and your perspective and your lenses. So it really changes things in terms of the output that you're getting. And it's going to be very different from what someone else might put in because of their background, their understanding, their knowledge, their experiences that they're inputting. If you're just asking for raw information and say, build me a vacation plan for Dubai, it might just spit out a few different things and say, okay, these are the things you can do. These are the places you can go. However, if you're really going in and saying, I've got a budget of $10,000, I'm traveling with a family, I'm traveling from Toronto to Dubai, now build me that plan. That's going to be very different than someone who's local with a budget of $10,000, because the flights are going to be a significant cost.
Yeah.
So it will go in and start catering towards that and making that customized plan for you. And that's just one example. If someone's into the travel industry, that they can actually help their customers and say, hey, you know what? This is what you can do. Yes, we have these things that are considerable, but these are some of the other things that you can do. And here's a plan that we've created. And they can actually do a customized plan for their clients, as an example.
I wanna go more into the prompt engineering that you mentioned, right? Obviously, many entrepreneurs will probably get someone in their team to create some of these automations and AI tools, right? But I think with prompt engineering, it's a buzzword, and you obviously touched upon it. But can you like, I guess that's how we can make the most of a tool like ChatGPT. What things would you recommend in terms of getting the most of a ChatGPT, for example, in terms of your prompts? What kind of advice can you give?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I would probably say on this is knowing what you're looking for. So I'm not even putting it on ChatGPT, I'm putting it on us to say, if we're not clear of what we're looking for, we're not going to get a clear answer. If it's just a general search of provide me some information on this topic, and I'm sure you might get something back. But if you're looking at building something very specific for your business, then you need to be able to understand exactly what it is that you're looking to get. Otherwise, you're just going to get frustrated. So with prompt engineering, and I'm going to be running a course on how to leverage ChatGPT to that extent for small businesses. I've got another session I'm doing in December, and that's going to be live in Toronto. But I'm going to be building a course, or doing a live course for a lot of our audiences that actually walks us through that. But what I will share is, with prompt engineering, it's how you send the message. So if I were to say, and I'll give you guys a very basic example, give me a list of books to read for a 12-year-old, right? It might give you generic books to read for a 12-year-old. However, if I go back and say, give me a list of books to read for a 12-year-old who enjoys the outdoors, traveling, and is an introvert, right? So they like the outdoors, they like traveling, but they're an introvert. Now that changes the whole dynamic of what ChatGPT is going to give you. And on the flip side, you can say, give me a list of books for a 12-year-old who doesn't like reading. And now it's going to go in and start finding things, because our goal as parents might be to introduce them to books and introduce them to reading. It might find books that might really be engaging and interesting for that child, as opposed to just a blanket list of 12 books or 13 books that it might recommend. So that's where prompt engineering comes into. Now, if we take that into a small business world, you might go in and say, um, I'll use the same example I was using earlier from a travel, and say, give me a vacation plan for from Toronto to Dubai under $10,000 for a family of 4 or 5, versus saying, I'm a travel agency. I want to make this experience very memorable for my clients. They have a budget of $10,000. Help me understand what are the best things they can do in Dubai within this budget, which includes airfare, which might be, I don't know, $6,000. So that really essentially leaves them with 4,000, right? Now it really gets ChatGPT going and saying, okay, so this is what your parameters are. Now this is what you want to achieve. Let's get creative. And through that, if you get a response that says something that you're not in agreement with, instead of closing that chat window and saying, okay, I'm done, this is not what I'm looking for, you can go in and say, no, this is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this and this. So cater this message or this plan based on these requirements. And it will go back and say, and it usually apologizes. So it'll go back and say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't really clearly understand. And I'll go back and I'll create a whole new plan. And you can go in and say, okay, yeah, I like this, but my client doesn't like this one part of this plan. So replace this one little thing with it. So now it's customizing. It's almost like we're working with an intern, like I talked about, and saying, what do we
Yeah.
have as draft one? This is draft one with all the information. Yeah, I'm not sure my client's going to like this thing. Let's remove that and let's add that. So the same kind of interaction conversation is what I would recommend. And this applies across anything you're trying to do. The training plans we were talking about, generating contracts, right? So we were talking about maybe creating a NDA between an employee and oneself, or a contract, generating an email that says something, and you can say, hey, make it longer, make it shorter, make it to the point, show me or create a table that has this data, right? All of that you can do by going back and forth with ChatGPT. I had a client recently I was talking to, and again, another small business, and she basically runs a business, but her social media presence, her posts on LinkedIn were they weren't at the same level as she wanted. She writes her content, but she's like, TJ, is there something else I can do? And I introduced her to the pro version of ChatGPT, as well as the Bing image creator, and they both allow you to create these very customized images that you wouldn't find on the internet, you wouldn't see, because it creates and generates that content for you. So you can go in and say, create an image of a travel agency in Dubai with a plane flying right over it, right? And now that customized image it will generate is very specific to what you're doing. So rather than going to a graphics designer and saying, hey, create this, you're going in and saying, just build this out for me, and it will do it. So tying back into the prompt engineering, it really comes down to how we talk to it. So yes, it's a buzzword like you mentioned around, but it's a very critical skill for us to understand and learn. Otherwise, we cannot harness the power of ChatGPT. We're going to struggle with it. We're going to get frustrated with it. And I personally did, right? In the very early days, I was like, this isn't what I'm looking for. This isn't what I was expecting. And I weaned off of it. But my ask would be, if for anyone who's really wants to leverage the power, dive into it, right? Roll up your sleeves. I did a talk for a large school board in Canada, and one of the things I mentioned there was, if you're not going to be adapting AI, and if you don't do it today, be prepared to get left behind, right? It's no longer about the other organization uses AI, so they're a little bit ahead. It's going to be a night and day difference, to the point where some of these businesses that are not adapting AI and leveraging AI technologies are going to be non-existent. And there's concern about, how is it going to stick around? Is it not going to stick around? Is it here to stay? Is it another buzzword? And I agree with where that sentiment's coming from. And it's all about the blockchains and the Bitcoins and all of that fun stuff. Then with the NFTs that happened, the big difference this time around is that every big player is in it. You've got Microsoft building Copilot. You've got Google building Bard, right? These guys are all in it in terms of, we're investing heavily in terms of transforming how these tools and these products work. So it's a big play now, and it's still early. A lot of people think, oh, have I missed the boat? It's very early still, right? It's still just taking off. It's coming out. There's a lot going on. And yes, there's a lot happening on the news and Instagram, everything you turn to, but we haven't missed the opportunity yet. Start leveraging it now is what I would say.
I've got another question, and that is, with ChatGPT, you have AI, right, and OpenAI. You could use AI and ChatGPT for internal processes, but you could also use it for external processes like customer service, or you put it on your website and people can use it for, let's say you're an accounting firm and you want to have a Q&A on your website where you have, what is an accrual, what is a prepayment, what's revenue, that. So how does that work in terms of the API with ChatGPT, and what kind of things have you seen that customers have really been able to leverage it, not just internally, but externally towards their customers as well?
Yeah, I think so. When you integrate the API piece, that gets a little bit more complicated, right? So that's something. It's funny you say that. There's a couple ways to look at it, and I was telling my daughter is 14, and she builds websites and she's into AI and stuff as well, and that's the conversation we have in the household, and that's how she's been doing it. And she wanted to build a tool, which was a tool that's coded from a software development perspective. And I said to her, before you go through all of that, why don't you ask ChatGPT how to do it? So she went to ChatGPT and said, I want to build a Chrome extension, and I want it to be very basic. I just wanted to change the cursor of the mouse every time I click on it. Something very simple. And I said, and the reason I said that was, I wanted her to go through the experience of creating the Chrome extension, not anything else. So ChatGPT gave her the instructions on how to do it. It can also give her the code on how to do it, right? So it went in and said, okay, here's the code you need, whatever language it's going to be, whether it's Java, JavaScript, or whatever have you. And it created that for her. And then she was far beyond excited, Rayhan. I can't even tell you. She's like, I did it. I made the Chrome extension. And I'm like, calm down. Let's relax. It's the first step. So the point I'm getting at is, all of that you envision that you want to do, you can do. And if you don't know how to do it, you go back to ChatGPT and say, how do I do this? If you want to integrate a chatbot into your website, it can give you all the instructions on how to do it. And there's a lot of ready-made ones that are coming out there now as well. So you can definitely plug into those. However, with even those, you have to feed it the FAQs, right? Or the information that, your company abides by. But you can work with ChatGPT to say, build me a list of these FAQs. This is the only FAQs that we're going to use. And you can feed that into either the ChatGPT API that you're going to be programming with and building with back to itself, or into that new tool that you're doing, or even your website in general, right? You can go into your website and say, here's our FAQ section. Here are the 5, 6, or 20 things, or whatever number of things that you want in there, and have that integration. But to answer your question, the possibilities are endless in terms of what we can do with it. And one of the things I always say is that it's not the platform, such as ChatGPT, that's limited. It's our imagination that's limited. So if you can imagine you can do something with ChatGPT or AI, you absolutely can. And it can show you exactly how to do it as well. So even if within your small business, you say, listen, I'm trying to build a website, I don't know how to do this. It can help you do that. It can actually create all that code for you. And setting up the servers and setting up all that back end, that's a whole different conversation. But if you wanted to actually essentially learn all of that, it can do that.
No, thanks for that. We're running out of time, so I've just got one more question, and if anyone else has any questions, please put it on the Q&A. I understand there's different. You touched upon there's different versions of ChatGPT, paid versions, and you've got free versions, and I think you've got ChatGPT 4 and 3 and all of that, right? Can you just explain what the differences are, and what if you're a small business and you want to use ChatGPT? Obviously, you can use the free version, but what makes the paid version stand out compared to the free version?
Yeah. So I would say, as a small business, if you're starting out, use the free, right? Like, just hands down, because you're not going to be able to get the value out of the pro version until you've exhausted everything out of the free. Let's put it that way, right? And so one of the limitations, it's time bound. So it used to be limited or restricted to, and this is the free version, 2021. They've now upped it until 2022 is where their database is. For the most part, you have enough information of what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to build a learning plan or a module or something, yeah, most of that works. However, if we're talking about the travel itinerary that I was talking about earlier in an example, you might want to leverage the paid version, because that has access to a few different things. One is plugins.
Yeah.
So you can actually go in and have plugins from different organizations. I think Expedia has one, and I say that from a travel perspective, but there's a bunch of others that can come in, and they're getting built out daily. You can leverage those, as well as leveraging the web. So it can connect to Bing through its interface, and now it can actually go out and say, let me find you the information you need that's relevant. So let's say a year and a half ago, within, I would say, let's say the past 6 months, something new came up in Dubai that the old system wouldn't know about, maybe a new attraction or something. That plan on the older version is going to be outdated, versus the current version. It's going to come out and say, okay, there's a new attraction. These are all the attractions, because it's going to pull that from the web and then use that data to build it. It is a lot more powerful, the GPT-4. It's got a whole different way of responding. So you'll get different responses depending on the questions you ask it. But for some of the simple stuff, yeah, absolutely. You can start with the free version. The one thing I will touch on around, again, I mentioned this in the beginning of the call, is what data are we putting in there, right? From a small business perspective, from a privacy perspective, just make sure you're not putting in your personal information, your client's personal information, something that's going to hold you liable, right? Because this is going back into the engine that is learning off of it and building off, and you don't want to feed all of that in there. And the second thing is, some of the data you get out, it could be synthetic, right? It could just make it up. So ChatGPT does do that. Validate your sources, because when you post something on any of your social media and say, you claim that this happened because of this, make sure you're not doing it blindly based on what ChatGPT tells you, because it will make it up in such a way that you will think it's real. There was a court case that happened, and a lawyer actually used ChatGPT it created synthetic and artificial cases using real names, real cities, real places. And when the cross-examiners checked all of that, they're like, this is not factual. Where'd you get this from? And it turned out that it was all made. A person had to apologize, and I believe they lost their license. I'm not sure to what extent, but it is risky. So make sure what you're putting out there, have the accountability that my name is on it, and I'm responsible for this, and then double check it rather than just throwing it out there.
No, very, very good points and very valuable advice. So thank you very much for that. We don't have any Q&A at the moment, I guess because it's 4 o'clock here and probably a lot of people are on the way home.
Yeah, hopefully they're not texting and driving.
Thank you very much for your valuable insights and your time. And obviously it's very early where you are in Canada. Is there any closing thoughts? How can we contact you if we want to get more information? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so I'll put so LinkedIn is where I live. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, please do connect with me, engage with me on LinkedIn. I will, in our comments section for the session itself, I'll put a link to a form if you're interested in learning about the prompt engineering, the very specifics of how to go from a very beginner to a pro. I'm putting up about a webinar series or a workshop that will actually get you all the tools that you need. After leaving Microsoft, I'm running my business on my own, and I live with ChatGPT on a day-to-day basis. There's not a moment that goes by where I'm not leveraging it. It's on my phone. I'm talking to it. So that's one of the other advantages of the paid version. You can have a conversation. It's almost like an AI and say, okay, I'm looking at doing this. How do I do that? So I'll go through all of that in terms of how I leverage it, how I use it, and how it can basically transform your business from what you're doing today to getting you at a stage where you never imagined, because your social media presence is stronger, your client retention is stronger, your communication is stronger. Like you name it, it actually builds it to that level.
Yeah. No, thank you very much for that. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us today. It was a really good session, really insightful. And yeah, we'll be in touch.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks.